Yeah, Simcha.
Ruchem Aboim B'Shem Irgun Shir Torah. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's shir from Rabbi Yakov Zev Smith Shlita, the topic of challenging Bishul questions. Whoever would like to have the great schus of sponsoring a shir, call Irgun Shir Torah 718-851-8651.
When you learn halacha, you know that you're never bored. There's always new questions, new shilas. Recently someone asked, he enjoys very much the instant hot soups that today are very popular. Is there any way to prepare an instant hot soup on Shabbos? In other words, take a soup that was instant, add hot water, use a kli shleini, shlishi. Is there any problem with that? Then we had a really interesting shayla. Someone cooked eggs before Shabbos to make the egg salad on Shabbos. And they cracked the first egg and they realized that the eggs were not hard-boiled, they were soft-boiled. You can't make egg salad from soft-boiled eggs. Is there any way on Shabbos to make it from soft-boiled to hard-boiled? And the third question, which comes up quite often, the woman of the house prepared a soup, a food, whatever it may be, and forgot to put in spices. Now, they're not going to serve to guests and tell them, put your own salt. I forgot to put in salt, pepper. They're very embarrassed. Is there any way to add salt or pepper or spices to a pot and then serve it after you added spices to the hot pot of soup or cholent or the like? So for this we have to learn a Mishnah, which is really packed with information that's negeya to this and probably 20 plus more shaylas. The Mishnah says in Shabbos Daf Mem Beis, Ha'ilfis v'kadera shaviran mirusachin. You have a pot that's on the fire, you took it off the fire, and now it's a kli rishon, a pot of food that's off the fire. Layiten l'soichan tavlin. You're not allowed to add spices, the assumption is uncooked spices, to a hot pot of soup, a hot pot of food. This is mamash our question. Why is this so? In our minds, Bishul is when you have a fire. You have a pot on the fire, you have an oven. But here the fire, the food is off the fire. You took it off the fire. So Rashi says precious words, the kli rishon kol zman shereiseach mevashel. As long as the pot is hot, it has the ability to cook even if there's no fire. And you have to realize when you cook a hot soup, for example, so not only the soup gets hot, but the pot gets hot. The pot is sitting on the fire for hours, so the soup gets hot and the pot is hot. So even though you took the pot off the fire, both the soup and the pot are still hot. And that is the halacha in Shin Yud Ches Sif Tes, a kli rishon, even if there's no fire, is fully capable of cooking midiraisa. This could be negeya. A person has sometimes you have Shabbos morning, the mikveh is very hot, and the heat is off already. You want to throw in some cold water into a hot mikveh. What's wrong? There's no heating element now, but a mikveh, believe it or not, is a kli rishon. So here we have the following halacha. Kli rishon is always capable of cooking, of course, if it's still hot. To give you a good example so we can relate to it, a person had unexpected guests Friday night. So my grandmother taught me, if you have guests, like to bishul lavasa, put a little bit of water into the soup, and you're okay. To take cold water and add it to a pot of hot soup, even if it's not on the fire, is this Mishnah, and Pashtus is a deraisa. To add uncooked spices, we'll soon see that today's spices are basically uncooked. To add uncooked spices to a hot pot of soup or cholent is mamish our Mishnah. That's the Mishnah. You can't add spices to a hot pot of soup. But our case could be different. For example, you'll take the hot pot of soup and pour the hot soup into a serving bowl. Can I then add spices? Can I then add cold water to increase my volume of soup? So this is the next words of the Mishnah. Aval noisnu l'soicha ka'ara. Rashi says, take the soup, pour it into a serving bowl, and then you're allowed to add spices or water into the serving bowl. The soup is still very hot. So Rashi says key words, the kli sheni eina mevashel. In other words, the original pot, the kli rishon, is capable of cooking. Once the food was transferred to a kli sheni, a serving bowl or a soup bowl, then you're allowed to add food because it does not get cooked. Now this we discussed a number of years ago, it was tape 348, the hezbollah, why a kli sheni can't get cooked. Basically because the kli sheni walls are cold, so the food cools off. But basically we see from the Mishnah two big yesaidas. Kli rishon always cooks, even if it's off the fire, and kli sheni is incapable of cooking. This concept of kli sheni being unable to cook is also a Gemara in the Memamad Beis. The Gemara says regarding Shemen, you're allowed to add oil to a kli sheni. Why? Zok the Gemara beferish shma mina kli sheni eina mevashel. That's the Metzias. Kli sheni cannot cook. There's a third Gemara, Daf Mem Beis, explaining a Mishnah, that you're allowed to add water, cold water, to a hot kli sheni, to a serving bowl, because again, kli sheni eina mevashel. A fourth Gemara we'll soon see regarding Bisra Datura, ox meat. It can never get cooked in a kli sheni. So here we have a Yesod over and over, which is Gepaskin and Shulchan Aruch. Kli sheni is incapable of cooking. No, oy bazoi, we have a great idea. You could make instant soup. If you forgot to make tea scents before Shabbos, you could put the tea bag into a kli sheni. Kli sheni eina mevashel. What's the problem? The problem is there's another Mishnah, which is really the hashlama of this sugya. The Mishnah Daf Kuf Mem Hey discusses pouring hot water from a kli sheni, not kli rishon, hot water from a kli sheni. So basically, irui kli sheni, pouring from a kli sheni, cannot cook, except chutz min liach hayoshen, and a salty food, a salty fish, salty meat, or the kulias ha'espanian. Now this is a type of a fish. Either it's I saw two taiches, either it's a Spanish mackerel or a carp. But basically, fish cooks much easier than meat. I mean, this is a metzias that we see. Meat, you have to cook for a long time. Fish, minimal cooking. And today we see even, we took it to a new level. Today we take raw fish. We gave it a Hamish name, sushi. MS. How do you eat raw fish? Because fish by nature is very tender, very soft, and it needs very little cooking. So the Mishnah is saying that fish cooks much easier than other foods. And even irui kli sheni, even pouring from a kli sheni, is capable of cooking fish. Now to make a very long story short, the yesod of this sugya is, Bishul is very subjective. Some foods, like we said, water, oil, spices, are what called choimrei habishul. It's hard to cook. And therefore, it cooks in a kli rishon, but in a kli sheni it cannot cook. Then, there's a category called kalei habishul. Kal means easy. It's easy to cook. Salty fish, fish bichlal. Since it is so sensitive to heat, it could even cook in a kli sheni. And the Mishnah says, because putting irui kli sheni, zuhi gemar malacha. That's the finishing touches. And the truth is, you'll see, you'll take a kli sheni, a cup of hot water, and pour it onto fish. It will warm it. It will boil it enough that you could eat it. So here we have a new concept. Till now we learned kli sheni eina mevashel. That's true. But if you have a kalei habishul that cooks easier, that could even cook in a kli sheni. There's another example. I should mention Daf Lamed Ches. It's kamat mefurish, but the Chazon Ish spells it out in Nun Beis Yotes. Eggs are kalei habishul. You could take water and even a kli shlishi, and put in an egg and keep on changing the water. You will be able to cook the egg. Because, again, egg is a very sensitive food, and it cooks even in a kli shlishi. You're wondering, but we just said Kli Sheni is not Mavashal. The answer is Pashut. It's not Mavashal a typical food, but Kali Bishul could cook even in a Kli Shlishi. And I think where you see this most dramatically in Daf Mem Beis Amud Beis, the Gemara discusses salt. Salt, as we know, is not a typical food. Salt is a mineral. And the Gemara has two opinions regarding salt. One Shita holds salt is even better than Tavlin. Tavlin is a Kali Bishul. Salt is so much, Chaymer Bishul. Salt is so much Chaymer Bishul that even in a Kli Rishon, it doesn't get cooked. Salt only cooks on a fire. But on a Kli Rishon that was off the fire, salt could not get cooked. It is so much a Chaymer Bishul that even in a Kli Rishon it doesn't get cooked. But there's another Shita, another Amoira, it says Punkt Fakert. Salt is a regular Kali Bishul that even gets cooked in a Kli Sheni. How do you understand the Machlokes? Of course, it's a scientific explanation. If salt could get cooked. But the point that I think we have to understand is Hilchos Bishul is very subjective. Something that cooks easy could get cooked in a Kli Sheni and even a Kli Shlishi. We had a few Gemaras that Kli Sheni ain't Mevashel. That's Chaymer Bishul. And what is Chaymer Bishul? We know is water, oil, and spices. Now, the last question, and then we'll get to Halacha L'Maisa, is, you gave us two categories. Chaymer Bishul that doesn't get cooked easy is water, oil, spices. Kali Bishul, we had fish, a salty food, eggs. What about everything else? What's the halacha for all other foods in between? So here we could make the following assumption. If you would tell me, Gzeres HaKosef, across the board, Kli Sheni doesn't cook, so then fine, Kli Sheni doesn't cook. But since you told me that this Kali Bishul that gets cooked even a Kli Sheni, so now if you have a food and you don't know what the status is, and if it's a Kali Bishul, then it's Klar, it's an Issa D'Oraisa. That's Klar. Magen Avraham says it, Mishnah Berurah says it, Kali Bishul is regular Bishul D'Oraisa, even in a Kli Sheni or even Kli Shlishi perhaps. So if you're going to tell me a food is Safek Kali Bishul, you should treat all foods like a Safek Kali Bishul. If you know for certain that it's Chaymer Bishul, for example, water, oil, spices, so you're safe. But any food is a Safek. And that indeed is the Shita of the Re'im. It's Kufla Medalad, one of the Gedali Rishonim, he's one of the Bali Atoisvis. He has this Shaila, and he says, if you don't know the property of that particular food, we have to treat it like a Safek Bishul, and even Shlishi Shayatsu Leathers Bay could cook. And then he gives a very interesting example. A common case, to add a baked food to a hot soup. For example, you have a hot bowl of soup, you want to add croutons, matzah, challah. Zakti Yerayim, Lamaisa, put in challah into a soup. Challah is very soft, and it's probably a Kali Bishul. How could you put a baked food into soup? What do you mean? What are you worrying about? The challah was baked already. Croutons were baked already. But maybe we'll be chayshes yesh bishul achar afiyah. Cooking was one effect, and now baking was one effect, and now you're cooking it. But I'm putting it into a soup bowl, which is a Kli Sheni, and maybe it's even a Kli Shlishi. Maybe it was from the original pot into a serving bowl, into my bowl. It's a Kli Shlishi. But that's his chiddush. Since Lamaisa, it's suspect to be a Kali Bishul, it could even cook in a Kli Sheni. And this is quoted by the Magen Avraham Sivkat Yudches, the Mishnah Berurah Sivkat Mem Beis, Aruch HaShulchan twice, Chafei Mem Dalet, and this is accepted halacha. There's Chaymer Bishul, and let's chazer over. There's food that never get cooked in a Kli Sheni, perfectly mutter, midin HaMishnah, water, oil, spices. There's Kali Bishul that we're certain is Kali Bishul. We saw fish, salty, very salty meat or fish. Eggs is a Kali Bishul. And other foods will treat as a Safek Aliyah Bishul, and the Yereim is Machmer. So now that we have the Yisaidis, let's continue and discuss many, many different shaylas. Let's start with the question we began with. Someone has unexpected guest, he needs extra soup, you can't cook on Shabbos, what do? Very simple. Take the soup pot, pour the soup into a serving bowl, and then add cold water, gesundheit. The soup ends up tasting delicious, you can't even tell you cook cold water on Shabbos. That's true. But water is definitely Chomer Bishul. So if you put the water into the soup pot, that's a Malacha Deraisa. Kli Rishon is Mavashal even off the Eish. If you know the halacha, you put it into a serving bowl, and you have nothing to worry about. Midin HaGemara, water is not Kaliyah Bishul. Someone asked me, his grandchildren enjoy putting ice cubes into very hot soup. I asked them, why do they do that? So the answer, the one-word answer that explains many strange activities of our children is sticky. They like it. I don't know. It's sticky to put ice cubes into hot soup. So Lamaisa, it's sticky and perfectly mutter. Why? Because ice cubes is no more than water, and water is Chomer Bishul. So why can't you cook water in a Kli Sheni? You'll say, but Lamaisa, you're changing the texture from ice into water. That's Noilid. So the answer is Moilid, crushing is Asa. Noilid is only Asa if you make a new entity. Here the ice cube dissolves into the soup and it's no longer noticeable. So it's not even Noilid. So again, it's Taka Mutter to put ice cubes into a hot soup. Next thing, I'll give you an Eitzah Toiva Ma'oi that will help avoid a lot of Agmas Nefesh. Very often we are given the job, we have to, grandchild, they want to prepare a baby bottle, and you're going to have to pour water from the urn into the baby bottle, and there's a problem, because the baby bottle was rinsed to clean it, and now in the baby bottle there is water that was never cooked, water from the sink. So you're given the job, dry the baby bottle well, and then call me, I'll make the bottle. If you ever tried, it's very hard to dry a baby bottle. You can't fit into the bottle. You have to start pushing in a towel and moving it around. It's very difficult. I'll give you an eitzah that will save a lot of time and agmas nefesh. All you have to do is don't dry the baby bottle. Keep with all the water. Get a regular cup, any cup, foam cup, glass cup. Pour the water into it. Okay? And then you could make the bottle by pouring that water into the wet baby bottle. Gewalt is water that was never cooked. But Kli Sheni ain't a mavashal. This is already Iri Kli Sheni, even better. But whenever you're given a job, dry the serving bowl, dry this, dry that, you could either be devoted and dry it, or you could do just as kosher, just as erlach, take the water, put it in the Kli Sheni, and then Kli Sheni ain't a mavashal. Someone prepared tea essence before Shabbos, but typically they put it onto the blech to keep it warm. The problem is this Shabbos they forgot to put it onto the blech, and now the tea essence is cold. Problem, this is a davalach that cooled off. Yesh bishul acha bishul. How do you make tea on Shabbos from this cold tea essence? The answer is don't worry. Don't put the tea essence into the urn, or into the chainik. Put the water into a cup, and then you could add cold tea essence, gesundheit. You see, the water gets nice and hot, but the tea essence is nothing more than water. Water is Chomer Bishul. Water is not cooked in Kli Sheni. The tea part of it was already cooked. Ein Bishul acha Bishul. Now, this would be mutataka, and this Mr. Bura says, if you cut in Lambateshin, Yudches, to add cold tea sense to a cup of hot water is perfectly mut. Now, many Yidden are choishish for the chumrah of Rabbi Yonis and Rabbi Eibshitz, that there's a problem of bishul, of adding tea essence into water. So therefore, you put the essence in a second cup, and you pour the hot water onto that. That's a chumrah, but mi'ikad din, there is no bishul whatsoever. Why? Because water can never get cooked in a Kli Sheni. That's a Gemara, and that's a Machab in Shulchan Aruch. The next question is making a hot drink on Shabbos. For some reason, there's a lot of confusion. People seem to be convinced the kala marba, the more cups you use, harei ze meshubach, there are cups and people are pouring back and forth. Let's simplify this once and for all. It's really very simple. You have to know the metzias, you should know in all of halacha, but especially in Hilchos Shabbos, and especially because the food industry is constantly changing. So before you know halacha, you have to know the metzias. The Chazon Ish said, a mistoyis in metzias is worse than a toyis in halacha. So we have to know the metzias of coffee and tea and sugar and salt and milk, etc., etc., but let's go one at a time. Instant coffee that we use on Shabbos is basically coffee beans that was roasted. Then you take the beans and you make it into coffee grind, you grind it, and then you cook the coffee grind, the coffee beans. After you finish cooking the coffee, you have somewhat of a coffee soup. Now, I don't want to insult the coffee lovers, so let's call it a liquid extract. But that's what you have. You cooked coffee in water, so you have like a soup of the extract of the coffee. Now, there are two methods how to prepare that. Either the old method was spray dry it, got out the water. Today, Taster's Choice uses a freeze-dried method, but really there's no difference as far as we're concerned. Coffee was fully cooked. Then the water was extracted. Oy bazoi, it should come out. You're allowed to put the coffee into 1 cup and pour hot water from the urn or from the crock pot, from the samovar, right into the coffee. What do you mean? But you're cooking? But coffee was cooked. Ein bishul acha bishul. So, mitzad halacha, all you need to make a cup of coffee is 1 single cup. You put the coffee in, pour the water on top, and you even yaitz the Rabbi Yonason as far as the problem of tzviyah, because you're not putting the dyeing agent into the water. So why does the Welt use 2 cups? This is for an interesting problem. Dava yavesh, a dry food, ein bishul acha bishul. But a davalach, a liquid, we paskin, at least the Ashkenazim, the Ramashit, the yesh bishul acha bishul. How do you classify coffee or tea powder, instant coffee or tea? It looks to me like a salad, but then again, no one eats the powder plain. It's put into water, and being that it's soluble, it not only mixes, but it turns into a liquid like the rest of the water. The way to use coffee and instant coffee and tea is put it in water and it becomes a liquid. Again, it's soluble that it loses identity. Oy bazoi, says the Machzah Shekel, Sivkot and Lamed Aleph, Rabbi Akiva Eigen, the end of Reish Nun Gimel says this, and Mr. Bura by us in Sivkot and Ayin Aleph quotes them. Maybe we have to treat something powdery like this like a davalach. Now, he didn't have instant coffee. He was talking about sugar or salt, we'll soon see. But any powdery substance is treated like a davalach. So now, if you pour water onto the coffee powder or tea powder, there might be bishul. It was already cooked, but yesh bishul acha bishul b'davalach. So how do you avoid that problem? Very simple. You put the coffee or tea into a 2nd cup. You take 1 cup, fill it up with water, and now you pour from cup number 1 into cup number 2. This is already irui klisheni, and that you don't have to be chayshish. So basically, la halacha, if you see someone making coffee in 1 cup, don't give him skila. It could be an erlachiyit, not a problem. You want to be chayshish, that it's considered a davalach. All you need is 2 cups. The same is true as far as adding sugar. Sugar today is always cooked. They take the sugar cane, they cook it, and then it becomes like a slurry type of substance. Then they remove the water, and you're left with sugar, granules of sugar. So the chayre ain't bishul acha bishul, but it's the same problem that sugar is soluble. It's used when it's put into a hot drink and it becomes a liquid. We treat it like a liquid, and therefore the minig is to use 2 cups, and then you're fine. Artificial sweetener, that's interesting. Saccharin, which used to be more popular, was made in a way that it wasn't ever cooked. It was dried, so there was a lot of tumult about saccharin that's not cooked. Today's sweetener, the Splenda, sweet and low, is a different system. I can explain it, but it happens to be fascinating how they do it chemically. But it's not. But it is cooked. The ingredients are cooked. But it's not really much of an afkamina. Today we make hot drinks in 2 cups, so even if it's never cooked like saccharin, but namaisa in a kli shlishi, you don't have to be worried about bishul. Instant cocoa, people say, I heard it's worse. It is worse in a certain sense, because instant cocoa, the cocoa of it was definitely cooked. But there are other ingredients added that was never cooked. Just like coffee was fully cooked. But flavored coffee, vanilla flavored, hazelnut flavored, the flavoring was never cooked. So that's why, for another reason, it's always safe to make a hot drink using 2 cups, because even if it was not cooked, you could assume that you have no problem of bishul. Now, why people use more than 2 cups is beyond me. Sometimes a grandmother asks her, make me a cup of tea. By the time he finishes making a tea with this cup and that and pours it back and forth, you could freeze from the cup of tea. You take away the whole geschmack of a Yid's Hilchos Shabbos. 1 cup is enough. 2 cups, dai v'hoisa. More than that, l'chayra, to my knowledge, is no reason. Now, once we're talking about cups, I wanted to make a point. You come to shul, sometimes, you want to get the milk soon. Milk is very liquid, that's a different problem. You come to shul, let's say, after the Shabbos morning coffee rush hour, you see dozens of cups lying around like in a battlefield, cups they're there that you throw out. Rabbi, I'll tell you something I think is 100% emes without exception. You could have 1,000 people drinking coffee, and if they're using their cup with a K, all you have to have at the end of 1,000 people enjoying a cup of coffee is 1 extra cup. Not 1,000. And I'll explain. Very simple. The first person takes a clean cup, fills it up with water. He can make coffee in that, but he's we like from people, fine. He pours it into a second cup. This cup he drinks, and of course he's a mensch, he throws it in the garbage. Now you have a cup that has water in it. And let's assume in the worst scenario, the water got freezing cold. Yes, bishul acha bishul. So you don't have to just leave it to be thrown in the garbage. The next person comes along, takes a clean cup, and puts the coffee into this cup. And he pours from cup number 1 into this cup. Any shayla at all? It's bishul. There's water that's cold. But water this is already kli shlishi. This cup is a kli shlishi. Water does not get cooked, even a cliche, this is a kli shlishi. Now, it's not used, it's not infected, it's not muktzah, it's not germs, it was plain water. So he uses his cup and throws it out. Now you have this cup that's, again, the cold water. Okay, let the next person take a clean cup, put water in it, and pour it into the cup with the cold water, and have 1 cup. So if you think about it, you have 1 cup after the other, all you have to have left over is 1 single solitary cup. Now, of course, we discussed in the previous year, styrofoam cups, since they retain the heat, temperature doesn't drop drastically. Some are machmir. It's not a cliche, but most poskim feel that since lamaisa, the styrofoam cup is not hot like a hot pot, it is treated like a cliche. But the point is, to be machmir is one thing, but stam, to be groping in darkness, there's no reason. We know what we're doing, and we do what we have to do. The next group of questions is adding spices, whether it's pepper, garlic, onion, salt, to hot food. So l'chayra, this should be very simple, because spices is a mishnah. The mishnah we began with, the mishnah of Membeis. You're not allowed to add tavlin to a kli rishon, even off the fire. But once you took it off the fire, now l'chayra, you should. Tavlin, as we know, is chaymer bishul, does not get cooked. So l'chayra, to add it to a hot pot kli rishon is asa. That's the mishnah. But once you put it into a kli sheni, it's perfectly mutter. Oy bazoi, what's the problem? Now, the truth is, I want to mention the metzias. Ground pepper was never cooked. Pepper comes in peppercorns. They grind it and they put it into they sell as pepper. It was never cooked. Onion and garlic, and the powdered onion and garlic was also not cooked. It was dehydrated, which is probably not, is not, at most it's afiyah, but it's not bishul. But who cares? The Mishnah says that tavlin you're allowed to add to a klisheni. They didn't cook their pepper in those days. So what's the shaila? So l'chayre mi'ikid din ha-mishnah, the housewife that forgot to put in pepper into a soup, take the soup off the fire, put the soup from the pot into a serving bowl, and add gesundheit. Rav Shlomo Zalman in Shmir Shabbos, as all the new prints in Aleph Ha'ara Kuf Ayin Dalet, he said that it's mistavra that our pepper today that's ground into fine little pieces is already kali abishal. Since it's so small, it's kali abishal. So therefore, you can add it to a klisheni. Now, this, of course, the Paiskim after Shlomo Zalman all wonder out loud, what does that mean? Do you mean tell me that in the times of the Mishnah they ate peppercorn? They put it into the soup? I mean, the Gemara in Be'ah discusses grinding on Yom Tiv, and it talks about grinding pepper. Why should we assume they ate peppercorn? So if the Mishnah permits putting tavlin into a klisheni, it's talking about even ground pepper. It's very small, but who said that decides? That Chazal knew what's chaymer abishul, what's kali abishul. So Rav Shlomo Zalman's chumrah is Rav Shlomo Zalman's a chumrah, but I could say the poskim that I consulted all were very surprised, and the Mishnah that permitted tavlin is even ground pepper. So la'alachin, you could add ground pepper even to a klisheni, of course kli rishonah, but to a klisheni, because it's a chaymer habishul. Now, lamaisa, if a person wants to be machmir, I'm also machmir like Rav Shlomo Zalman, tava la bracha. But in the case that I began with, it involves a ben adam mechaver, a kvayid ishtai. The wife does not want to serve the soup, but you have to put it, tell people put it into klishlishi and then add the pepper. That's better be machmir in ben adam mechaver, and rely on most shitas that pepper today is no different than tavlin of the Mishnah. And you could not add it to the original soup pot, you could add it to a serving bowl, and then serve it, and then you solve the problem. Salt, adding salt to a hot pot, to a serving bowl, salt is a little different, because salt is a Gemara. Pepper is a Mishnah, salt is a Gemara. And we saw the Gemara that some hold that salt is very much chaymer abishal, even a kli rishon. Others say fakert, it's a kali abishul. How do we paskin? So the Machaba in Shin Yud Chasif test paskins like most Rishonim that salt is an extreme chaymer habishul. It does not get cooked even in a kli rishon. According to that shita, you could add salt to the hot pot of soup and there's no problem. The Ramah says yesh oisrim, a very mild endorsement, but yesh oisrim to add salt even into a klisheni because it's fakeret a kali abishul. And then he quotes Taisis v'amachme tovay ola bracha. Now obviously he's not paskening that it's asa. He's saying yesh oisrim, and he quotes Taisis, you get a bracha if you don't add salt to a klisheni, klirishim. Now, so lamaisa, our case, you want to add salt to a hot pot of soup, the right answer would be for Svardim it's mutter lachatchila, for Ashkenazim mi'ikidin it's mutter, but their must says machma tavalah bracha. I saw the Munkat Rebbe in the Mukher Achayim on our simon. He says his father used to say that lamais you could add salt to a kli rishon or kli sheni, but I'm just dramatizing a little bit. Imagine if the Ramah would come to town and he's giving brachas for the next hour in our base medrash here. There'd probably be a line till 36th Street getting a bracha from the Ramah. So his father said, for a little bit salt, you give up a bracha of the Ramah. The Ramah gave you a bracha. Don't put salt in and tavalah bracha. And we have to add, it's not just the bracha of the Ramah, it's the bracha of Toisis. So you have Baliyat Toisvis and the Ramah. So that's why people are refrained from putting salt into a kli rishon and perhaps even a klisheni. Why? Because we have a bracha of the Ramah and Toisvis that we chayish that salt is very much kali habishal. But the same Mr. Brura that discusses this, he says, but could be our salts are better. Why? Now, you have to understand the Metzias, because today things are changing very quickly. There always was three ways of producing salt. The easiest way is you salt that's mined. You find big deposits of salt and you crush it, and that's rock salt, which generally is not clean enough to be consumed. That's used to sprinkle on ice. But that's salt that was not touched. It's mined and it's crushed. Then there's sea salt, salt that comes from the sea. Now there are two ways of producing salt from the water in the sea. There is one way you cook the water. You get big amounts of water and you cook it, so the water is evaporated and you're left with salt. No, that's Bishul. But there's another way, solar evaporation. Now it's interesting, in the warmer countries, Eretz Yisrael, for example, and California, the Caribbean, that are big producers of salt, they don't have to cook it. Why do you have to cook it? They take a lot of water, they put it in the sun, there's no rain in Eretz Yisrael for weeks, you could assume that the salt will remain, the water will get cooked, not cooked, it will be evaporated by the sun. So it's all about, the bottom line is money. Why do you have to cook it if you could do without money? It costs nothing. So that's why it's been said, and correctly so, salt that was produced in Eretz Yisrael was never cooked. It was left in the sun. That's not levels of Bishul temperature. But that's made in the America and other countries that you can't rely on having sun without rain for long times. Then the salt was cooked. So therefore, even if salt is kali abishal, but then again salt is cooked. Okay, you have to be chayshed that maybe it's a davalach. But at least be aside, salt was already cooked. Now here's the catch. In recent times, they devised a system, and again, I did a lot of research. It's interesting how the companies are focused on eliminating costs. That's the bottom line. They figured out a system that you could basically get rid of the salt without using intense levels of heat. Get the water without using very strong bishul. They cook it at a low level, be lower than yatsi ledes, and then they heat that mixture in an oven for around 10 minutes at a temperature of 200 degrees. So all the Balei Halacha that know the Metzias will tell you that it's not considered cooked, because it was cooked at a level lower than Yatzir Ledes. Now we come to a new phenomenon. Maybe salt, believe it or not, is considered afiyah. But if you put it into soup, yesh bishul ach afiyah. So Rabbi Yakov Zev had a very interesting svar, and he said that really salt is no bishul. That's what the Mechaber says. Even the Ramos is making it in. It's just the Ramos Tavei alav bracha. So Tavei alav bracha is salt that was never cooked. Salt that was baked, it's only a chumrah of yesh bishul ach afiyah. Maybe then the Ramos chumrah doesn't apply, which is a chiddush. That's what he wanted to say. I saw another interesting svar. There's a real einfall that really mamanashach you could add salt, our heintige salt, because if your salt is a type of chaymer bishul that doesn't get cooked at all, you could add it to a kli rishon even today, even though it's never cooked. What are you chayshish? Salt is kali bishul. No, if salt by property is kali bishul, then the 10 minutes in the oven was enough to cook it. It gets cooked easy, good. So 10 minutes and 200 degrees is pretty hot. You'll say yesh bishul ach afiyah. That's shaykh when the bishul is a different effect than the afiyah. You put matzah into soup, so matzah baking is one effect, and soup is a different effect. But salt doesn't change. Baking, cooking. So it's really yitachan to say that our salt, especially if you're not sure what the mitzvah is, you could even add it to a kli rishon that's off the fire. Now that's really pushing it, but definitely to add salt to a kli sheni, there is a tzad to be makel, either whether it's cooked, or whether it's afiyah, or whether you rely on the mechaber miyakidin. Okay, if you want to get the Ramos bracha, you want to be Taisis bracha, lamaisa to add salt to our soup bowl in front of us is almost always a kli shlishi. Because either you put the soup into a serving bowl, or minimally you ladle it out with a ladle, and some say a ladle is already kli sheni. It's very rare you pour from the pot into a soup bowl. So azoivai, we could say this kli shlishi to add salt. You would even get the Ramah's bracha, enjoy the salt, and enjoy the bracha. A fascinating contemporary question that maybe 10 years ago was not negeya, and I have a picture in front of me. I could show it to you afterwards. There's a metzias today. People used to make Shabbos. Today, many people buy Shabbos. You go to a takeout and you buy ready-made food. So it's very common people buy for Shabbos day. They buy ready-made chicken or lakshan, whatever it may be, and they know they're doing labali halacha. You want to have hot chicken Shabbos day is not such a problem. You take the fully cooked chicken, put it on top of a cholent pot, and very often the chicken is piping hot. You are warming a cold chicken on Shabbos, no problem, because it's ein bishul acha bishul, and it's not mechzikim avashal. So that part is without concern. You take a cold chicken that's fully cooked, put it on top of a pot, or you put it on the side of a blech that's off the blech, but let's say next to the blech. B'kitzur, you could warm fully cooked chicken from cold to piping hot without a shayla. But here's the catch. Takeout food, I'm not a takeout food owner, but the metzias is they add spices that were never cooked after the preparation of the food. I have 4 pictures in front of me. It's a colored picture. You can see it. Sometimes they add raw sesame seeds or parsley flakes or raw black pepper onto fully cooked food, whether it's chicken or lakshan, whatever it may be. So here we have a new scenario. Taka mitzad, the chicken or the lakshan that was fully cooked, no problem. But the spices that I just mentioned are getting cooked. Tavlin is a Mishnah that's Kalei Bishul. That's Chomer Bishul. That's if it was klisheni. But then you're putting it on Gabe Eish. Come on, you're putting it onto the source of heat. And that's why I saw the Rabbanim on Lakewood. It has nothing to do with Lakewood per se, but they happen to put out a Kol Kaira that when you rewarm on Shabbos food that was fully cooked, make sure there are no components, no spices that were never cooked before Shabbos. Again, you could put pepper into a klisheni. That's the Mishnah. But you can't cook pepper on Shabbos. And putting it on top of the cholent pot, if it gets piping hot, you're cooking it. That's almost like a agabi oesh. So that's a point to consider. Another case which is similar, people, today it became more of a minik, quote unquote, but the people started putting arbis into soup. Cooked arbis into soup. Okay, I see this, and this is an interesting minik. But the question is, to put arbis into a hot soup off the fire. You took the soup off the fire, you want to put arbis in. L'chari, there's no problem. Arbis is fully cooked, ein bishul acha bishul. But if you have arbis that were commercially made or even homemade, you don't cook it with the spices. You first cook the arbis, then you add the spices. So if you have black pepper, for example, that was never cooked, so here you're putting spice that was never cooked into a kli rishon. For that, even with Arab shleim is almas chomer. This is putting into kli rishon. So that you have to be worried about. So if you have in a kli sheni, then we have the pashtas that'll be mutab, shleim bezalmans, yisoid, l'shitasi would be a problem. Tak in shulchan shloima and sifkat lamates, he points this out as well. L'shitasoi, that there's a problem with pepper, even a kli sheni. Don't add spices to a kli sheni. Now again, if you want to add your arbis to a kli shlishi, to your cuppa, your pot of your bowl of soup, that's easier, but a kli sheni is an issue. Adding a slice of lemon into a hot tea, l'chayra, a slice of lemon was never cooked. What's that tzad heta? So some suggest maybe a lemon is considered a tavlin. So a tavlin does not get cooked in a kli sheni. So then when you put the water into your cup, it's your first cup, but it's a kli sheni, don't forget. This is a kli sheni, you could add a lemon. However, the Ktesa Shochem Kuv Chavdal Yudal, it says that's not true, because only the tavlin that Chazal discussed, we are certain is a tavlin. They didn't have lemons. We discussed a few months ago, the Shayim speak about a lemon, but they didn't have lemons in the Gemara, so who said it's a tavlin? Rav Moshe in Chelik Dal, Rayin Dal, Tzivkat Yud Chesed, Shemazam, Shmir Shabbos have a more fundamental problem. A lemon is not a spice, a lemon is a fruit. Many people, use lemons other ways, but it's not a spice. The whole concept is incorrect. So lemaisa, to put lemon into a cup of tea is a problem. But if you used 2 cups, so now your cup of tea is already a kli shlishi, we could assume that that might be mutter, because even though it is not a tavlin, but as we'll soon see, there are things that we unless something is gemar bishulai, kli shlishi would be a heta. Adding matzah, croutons, etc. into a hot soup is mamish our ureim, and therefore should not be done. But the minig ha'olam is to add matzah and challah and croutons, the ureim, asas, and all the achrayim quotas la'alacha. So the answer is our bowl of soup, when you're adding your cooked item, is already a kli shlishi, and therefore the ureim agrees, that's okay. The ureim was machmir by adding matzah to a kli sheni. And therefore, if you have a bowl of soup that came from a serving bowl, is already a kli shlishi. The Mishnah Berurah in Sif Katan Memhei says, even if you took a ladle and from the pot into your bowl, you could be soymech that the ladle is a kli sheni, even though it's not so pashit, regarding this shaila, and then you could add matzah or croutons to your bowl of soup, you could assume it's a kli shlishi. Now, interesting, these used to be a very popular minhag. Today it's less and less, but people take a mezainis cake cookie and they dip it into the hot drink. You have to realize that dipping a mezainis into a kli sheni, into a hot cup of water, for example, which is a kli sheni, according to the Reim, is the same problem. It's not no exeris akos of matzah or croutons, cake and cookies is also the same. Yes, bishul achafiyah. So if you want to dafka dip mezainis into your hot drink, you'll have to use 2 cups. So the second cup, it's a little confusing, but the second cup is already in halacha a kli shlishi, and there's no problem. What's surprising is someone prepared lokshin before Shabbos, and they want to really make it hot. They want to add the lokshin into the hot pot of soup. Can you add fully cooked lokshin into a kli rishon that was taken off the fire? And believe it or not, the answer is it's perfectly mutter. Because lokshin, as opposed to matzah and croutons, was cooked. It's a davi yavesh, ein bishul acha bishul. So to add a cooked food to a kli rishon off the fire is mutter. It's not a question of kali charmi, this is ein bishul acha bishul. But very often, when you cook lokshin, after you cook lokshin, you rinse the lokshin, and that lokshin has cold water that was never cooked. So that, of course, gets cooked in a kli sheni. It's only in a kli, it could get cooked in a kli rishon, but in a kli sheni, that's fine. Now, adding to a hot drink milk or lemon juice or honey is basically one sugya, because the truth is that it always was that a person milked cows and they used it. You squeeze lemon, you have lemon juice. Today, commercial milk, lemon juice, honey is pasteurized. Now, pasteurization is supposed to be at a temperature of 160 degrees, which is really enough to be considered bishul. The problem is, in recent time, they perfected a system to pasteurize something at a much lower temperature, simply to save money, save energy. But let's assume that they pasteurize it at 160. L'chayra, you're allowed to add it, because ain't bishul acha bishul. The problem is that milk, lemon juice, and honey is a davar and yesh bishul acha bishul. But here we come to a very dike chiddush. 2 out of the 3 prominent choymrei habishul that we know midin Gemara are water and oil. Did you notice the common denominator? They're both liquids. The Rav Shulchan Aruch seems to assume in Sif Yud Beis that water and oil are examples of choymrei habishul. But the Rav Lashon is mayim v'shemen v'hu adin l'shar mashkin. The Rav makes a sweeping chiddush, and he says that any liquid is choymrei habishul. Oy bazoi, we're back to the Mishnah. You could add even uncooked milk and uncooked lemon juice, hamish lemon juice, into a kli sheni, because it's a choymrei habishul, does not get cooked in a kli sheni. Now, the Shulchan Aruch's lashon in Sif Yud Gimel, mutar litain kitain shel mayim oy shar mashkim, into a kli sheni. It seems like the Rav. However, we don't find in any of the Paisugim that mention other mashka. We find oil, water, and the tzlach in the Drush Lamed Vav, he talks about milk, And he says, he's talking, of course, about milk that was not pasteurized, but he says there are some things that get cooked even a klisheni, the suffix skilahu. So he says, beferish, adding milk to a klisheni is a suffix skila. Obviously, he assumed only water and shemen. The Mishnah Berurah discusses adding milk to a hot drink, and he says it's mutter because milk was already pasteurized, and bishul acha bishul. So the indication is the Mishnah Berurah also holds that there's no cross-the-board heter regarding liquid. Then I saw a beautiful tshuva that sums up the whole sugya in the Cheshav Eifar Rapadava in Chayla Gimel Simimem. He says the minig by us, he says, always was that you're allowed to add even uncooked milk because it's charmei habishul. Then I found something that niv'alti, he said nehivil oisi ma'oid, I got frightened. I found this Noida Behuda, the tlach and the drashes, that adding uncooked milk is considered the chayev skila. So I showed my son this, and he says, relax. And my son showed me the Rav Shulchan Aruch, that liquid is not kala yitzchar miyabishal. So here you see the difficulty of this shaila. To add uncooked lemon juice, milk, honey, according to the Rav, usiyatoi, is mutter. According to the tzlach, the mashmois, and the Mishnah Berurah, is a chayev skila. So I'm not going to machriya, but I know what I would do if I have a suffix like this. We try to make it in a kli shlishi. Then you could assume that a kli shlishi isn't capable of cooking. Honey is, again, commercial honey is cooked. If you have a Hamish made honey, it's never cooked. You have the same shaila. Someone forgot to make tea before Shabbos, tea sense. Or we'll talk about the instant soup. So here we come to a delightful part of the sugya. L'chayra, if you want to be from, you'll put the tea in a kli shlishi, or the instant soup you'll make in a kli shlishi, and you can't go wrong, because kli shlishi is not bavashal. But here we come back to our original Mishnah. The Mishnah says that there are certain things that's the Gemara Malacha. Kol Yesospanyan, that's so sensitive that cooks even in Irui Klisheni. That's the Mishnah. And the Gemara says such foods that are so sensitive, then the chayev chatos if you cook it even in iri klisheni. And the Pri Megadim, and as other poskim are quick to point out, if iri klisheni is asa, then klishlishi is also asa. So what do we see? Certain foods that's the gemar malacha, and you need minimal heat to prepare it from non-usable to usable. Even in a klishlishi is a problem. A good example is, I mentioned earlier, an egg. The Chazei Nish, that I mentioned earlier, and the Shmir Shabbos and Aleph Kuf Samach Tes says an egg, being it's so sensitive to heat, it's shaykh bishul even in a kli shlishi. You put it in hot water, kli shlishi, then you change the water, otherwise it won't cook. But if you keep on changing the water, you could cook an egg in a kli shlishi, and it's bishul. Because this is the Gemar Malacha of an egg. What to me was intriguing, imagine what we began with. Someone cooked eggs and he didn't do a good job. It's soft-boiled eggs. Can he put it in shlishi water to make it hard-boiled? I saw a very thorough tshuva in the Migdanai Salayo Chayla Gimel Lamed Zayin, a beautiful tshuva about eggs. Is it lachen, yovesh? But at the end of the day, he says that a soft egg and a hard egg is two different worlds. It's not like just improved, not like you're getting a little more cooked. And he's concerned that cooking from soft to hard will be bishul. The Shmir Shabbos and that shtickle has a suffix. But if someone forgot to cook the eggs fully, or he forgot to cook it b'chlal, there might be an eitzah. Put the eggs into a hot sun. That's grada machaba. You can't go wrong. Shin Yud Ches Yud Gimel. You're allowed to cook eggs in the sun. Cham is mutter. Is it practical? I don't know, but at least it stems. Now the next question: to make a tea, you forgot to make the tea essence. Can you put tea into a hot kli shlishi? Of course, if the water is cold, there's no shayla. I'm talking about a hot kli shlishi. So lamaisa, the mitzias is, you see that tea gets cooked in a kli shlishi. The truth is, many people on a regular day make tea in a kli sheni. Shabbos, we don't even make tea, but even on a regular day, you put the water into the cup and then you add a tea bag. And this, probably why the Aruch HaShulchan and Sif Yud Ches says that tea Davi Yodua she Bishul and Kal Einenu Royais she Mizbashlim B'Kli Sheni Uva Kli Shlishi. In other words, the Aruch HaShulchan is saying emphatically that a tea bag is not just kali bishul, but that's the gemar malacha. That's the way you cook the tea bag. And he feels to put a tea bag into a kli shlishi is probably a malacha deraisa. The Hilchos Shabbos, B'Shabbos, and Perek Ches or 79 quotes Rabbi Yashiv and Rav Fisher, and the Shmir Shabbos and Aleph Nun Zayin also says this, that a tea bag is a form of kali bishul, the gemar malacha that cooks even a kli shlishi. Rav Moshe has his chiddush in Chelik Dalet, Ayin Dalet Sivkot and Tezvav, that he says nothing could get cooked in a kli shlishi. The Aruch HaShulchan says tea, because you see it gets cooked. So Rav Moshe, it's not true. Because if you take a tea bag and put it in cold water, it also, after a while, it gets usable. That's what Rav Moshe's chiddush. Now, I am not a connoisseur, especially not about tea, but people that know tea have told me that a tea that's made in cold water tastes differently than a tea that was made in hot water. So, of course, it's prepared and it has the same color. So, again, if you ask me what to do, you see the different shittas, but if the Aruch HaShulchan and many poskim shrai that it's bishul deraisa, you have to be careful. The Mishnah Berurah and Sivkot and Lametes discusses making tea. He does not mention at all using a kli shlishi. So certainly his feeling seems to be that it's a problem. So probably the eighth is you put the tea bag in cold water, and then you could add that tea essence that you made on Shabbos to hot water in a kli sheni. That's easier, because the water is vital water that doesn't get cooked in a kli sheni. The tisha boy, whatever it is not getting, hopefully he's not getting more cooked. Instant soup, and I want to thank Rabbi Senta from the Chavkeit giving me the clarification, and this and others, foods as well. Instant soup has three parts to it. The vegetables that were never cooked, they were dehydrated. The lakshin, depending on each particular brand, but some of the lakshin was never cooked. The lakshin is dried, prepared in a way that when you pour water onto it, you can make it edible. Some lakshin is deep fried, that's true. Some was never cooked. The spices are like spices. Some of it are soup that was dehydrated. So it was originally soup, so it was cooked. Some are spices that were never cooked, pepper, for example. So to make a instant soup, even in a kli shlishi, involves potentially a malacha deraisa on the vegetables for sure. If the lakshin was never cooked, it's bishul on the lakshin also. The instant soup used a chachma that's called kali bishul. And they made a system that you could prepare soup with minimal heat. So that's why to prepare an instant soup in a kli shlishi, that might be the gemar malacha. It's another example of our Mishnah that even a kli shlishi cooks it. Rav Vozman Chelik Ches Samach Gimel discusses cubes of instant soup, which is easier because there's no lakshin, there's no vegetable, and even there he's machmi, doesn't know exactly the metzias. Instant oatmeal, someone asked me, I'm making it on Shabbos. So instant oatmeal, the metzias is they slice it into thin slices, and basically they toast it, but it was never cooked. You add the water, you prepare it. That's the gemar bishulai. That's just like instant soup. Le'idach gis, the instant baby cereal was fully cooked, and then they made it into a powder, so that would be a question of ein bishul acha bishul, if it reverts to a liquid, which generally cereal doesn't, so that's easier. Achrein chav, I'm going to just mention this because it's really part of a different share, but we have to mention it for this sugya. Adding spices, uncooked pepper or salt, to a hot cholent, hot kugel. Someone asked about adding ketchup to a hot piece of meat. A very interesting shayla today. Things are coming up. New shaylas. People like to have hot pastrami Shabbos morning by a kiddush. They keep it hot. I don't know how they keep it hot, but keep it hot. To take a piece of hot pastrami and put it onto a challah. And the last shayla someone asked was, he heard you're not allowed to have coleslaw on the same plate with hot food. What do I have against coleslaw, he wanted to know. I said, I'm thinking it's coleslaw. So let me explain this all in 2 minutes. All of these cases, l'chayra, it's a klisheni. The pastrami was on a fire, now you put it onto your piece of challah. You want to add ketchup or garlic onto hot kugel. You're not adding it in the bekala, you're putting it on your plate. Maybe it's a klisheni, maybe klishlishi, it came from a serving bowl. But if you notice, this is interesting. Till now we spoke about liquids as far as bishul. Hot soup, hot water, hot drinks, cocoa. Now we have hot meat, hot potatoes, hot kugel, davagush. Davagush, according to many Gedalia Paiskim, remains a kli rishon even if it was transferred. The whole mitzias of kli sheni shlishi is you pour soup into a cold bowl, it cools off. Into another bowl, it cools off. But hot food, hot meat, hot solid food remains with the same heat. And you see this b'chush. You have a soup that's very lukewarm, but the carrot or the knedel is much hotter. Why? First of all, the knedel, the salad, was not affected by the walls. And more so, it retains the heat in the salad, in the center of it. That's why the Mishnah Berurah says to pour pepper, uncooked pepper, onto a davagush, says the Mishnah Berurah, if cotton samachei, is a problem. Why? We have to treat the hot, whether it's kugel meat or the knedel, as a kli rishon. Kli rishon cooks pepper. Tav was mutter in a kli shein, not a kli rishon. Taking meat, hot meat, and putting it onto a challah, there's a tzad to be makel. Even though we should assume that it's that this is still davagush, maybe you could say yes, ain't bishul achafiyah. Now we are chayshes for that, but at least if you put the meat onto a serving bowl, then onto your plate, and then onto your challah, at least you have what to be saymach on that ain't bishul achafiyah. But basically, to take a piece of meat onto a piece of challah is a problem, the same problem like direim. Now, what's this coleslaw problem? What do we have against coleslaw? So nothing with coleslaw. But the coleslaw was never cooked. In the coleslaw, there's vinegar or mayonnaise or both, and both of them have parts. Vinegar, commercial vinegar was never cooked. Vinegar has, and mayonnaise has parts that was never cooked. And here it says Rabbi Yashiv, Rav Ozna, and Rav Fishna, all quoted in the Ma'or Shabbos, Aleph Reish Samach Gimel, that when that coleslaw touches the hot kugel or hot meat or cholent, it's a davagush that's cooking the non-cooked coleslaw. However, Rav Shlomo Zalman also there was quoted, he said, Loi nichalei, v'gam gush einei rak safik, v'loi mischaven, v'gam tzas mekalkel, v'akol derech misasik vein tam lachish lezeh. You're not like pepper onto a piece of kugel, you want to put the pepper on the kugel. Here you want to eat the separate coleslaw and meat separate. If I carrot, you're ruining it, you don't like cooked coleslaw. So Rav Shlomo Zalman was makel, the other paiskim were machmir. If someone is machmir tovei lav bracha, if the kugel is already cooled off, there's no problem. But one thing we could say, to put salt onto a davagush, if it was already cooked, that's definitely mutter. Because that we have the ikadin that ain bishul acha bishul, and that would be mutter. I couldn't talk to you all. Oh, you're there? Oh, you're a muscle. Okay. Yeah. Hey.
Rabbi Smith for today's share. In a few minutes, Rabbi Smith will give a sikkum of today's share. 5 minutes.
fried. It's deep fried. Also, it says deep fried. Yeah, it's deep fried. Yes. Yeah, it's deep fried. It's deep fried. I think it says it. It was Avei. Deep fried. Doesn't matter. You could it's a chilek.
Either one.
It's not nostalgic.
You saw the map.
The Himalayan. What's with that pink salt? What's it called? It's cooked, isn't it? It's raw. It's raw fried. It's okay. It's not a pollution. Oh, I hear what you're saying. How is that possible to get such a curly thing over? How can it? Lakshan is a straight thing. How do you get into this shape? It has to be processed before.
It goes through such it goes through such forms.
So it's a raw product. But it's a raw product. It's never been cooked.
Still actually says it's cooked like between 180 and 200.
So it's not raw.
Not totally raw, but it's not fully cooked either. In between. It depends.
Let me hear. The ready soups. Don't get the ready soups. Shapes. So it's cooked before it goes into the package. You think it's already cooked. So then, what's your problem? Then why is there still Hilchos Shabbos? It's after.
Yeah, here tomorrow Shia. Tell them that tomorrow Shia would be about that.
Okay. Tomorrow it's going to be yesterday.
Rabbi Sikkim of today's Shiva, Rabbi Smith, Let's take a few minutes.
Just to review what we learned today about Hashem, Kli Rishon, even off the fire, is capable of cooking min HaTorah. It's a regular Bishul Deraisa. Something that was never cooked that's added to a Kli Rishon, even off the fire, is the problem of Bishul. That's the Mishnah. Kli Sheni, however, the Mishnah says, is incapable of cooking. The exception to that is, as we explained, there's something called Kalia Bishul that cooks easily. It's a more tender food and could in fact be cooked even a Kli Sheni. The Mishnah calls that the Gemar Malachton. That's the way it's prepared. It doesn't need that high level, high grade temperature to cook. Even a Kli Sheni is capable of cooking. Basically, cold water is not at all Kalia Bishul. Water, oil, and spices are definitely not Kalia Bishul. So to add cold water to a hot soup in a Kli Sheni, in a serving bowl is fine. To put ice cubes into a Kli Sheni, certainly Kli Shlishi is okay. If you want to avoid drying a baby bottle or any keli, put the water into a cup and then add it to the baby bottle that has water that was never cooked, because there's no bishul by water in a Kli Sheni. If you have cold tea scents, you could add it to a Kli Sheni. To make coffee, mi'ikir din, if the coffee was fully cooked, there would be ein bishul acha bishul. You could add hot water onto the coffee, but there's a very good reason to be machmir to use 2 cups. Some say tzivia. The truth is, some say, today I just heard this after the share, that some coffee, they add a little of Turkish coffee to the compound, to the mixture. So basically in coffee, you might have coffee that was never cooked, which I was unaware before the share, but that's something to think about. So B'kitzur, Minig Yisrael is to use 2 cups. So the second cup is already a Kli Shlishi. But the extra cup, you could have 1 cup, as we explained, for 1,000, or Kiflayim K'yoytz Mitzrayim can use 1 extra cup, because basically the water in the cup, even if it's fully, it has cooled off entirely, it is still ein bishul acha bishul. The point is that water is chaymer bishul, not get cooked in a Kli Sheni. Coffee and tea or any powdery substance, sugar, salt, etc., even if it's fully cooked, but there's a reason to say that's considered like a davalach, because it's soluble and it becomes liquidy like the rest of what it's put into, and therefore there will be a problem of ein bishul, of yesh bishul acha bishul by davalach, which is another reason to use a second cup when you're making a hot drink. Some coffees, part of it were never cooked, as we said, flavored coffee or instant hot cocoa. Spices generally were never cooked. Some spices were dehydrated. Pepper was never cooked, but it's still the het of tavlin that a Kli Sheni is mutter. Shlomo Zalman said if it's ground, it becomes a kalia bishul. Other places come on for that, but definitely we could say that to put in a Kli Shlishi, even uncooked spices would be mutter. Adding salt as a shtickle of a reason to be more machmir, even though mikadin salt is a very much chayrei bishul, but the Ramah Taisa says you get a brach if you don't add it to a Kli Sheni, so people are makbid to add it to a Kli Shlishi. Salt that was cooked, there's another reason to be makel, and then add it even to a Kli Sheni, but again, make sure that the salt that you have is cooked, because now it's more and more that the salt is not cooked, and maybe it was dried but not cooked. If you have a food, a takeout food, or any food that a person made, and they added spices after it was cooked, you can't warm that on Shabbos, even though there's no problem of chazara, no problem of bishul, but there's a problem of cooking spices that was never cooked, and that was not a Kli Sheni. This is kamat like a al ha'esh. Put arbus into a hot soup. If it's a Kli Sheni, is mutter. The problem is if there's pepper that was added, then it's tavlin. The point of Shlomo Zalman, a Kli Shlishi is needed. But like most paiskim, putting arbus with uncooked pepper in a Kli Sheni is okay. A slice of lemon should not be put into a hot cup of tea. If it's a Kli Shlishi, you could be makel that there's no bishul by a Kli Shlishi. Even though we said by Gemar Bishul, even Kli Shlishi is asa, but lemon we are not certain is a Gemar Bishul. Some do say it's a tavlin, so you can be saying a Kli Shlishi is fine. Matzah, croutons, etc. into a bowl of soup is generally mutter. Either it's a Kli Sheni, or maybe even a Kli Shlishi, because no one puts it into the actual soup bowl. So we could assume that the ladle made it already into a Kli Shlishi. A cold lokshin into a kli rishon is fine if there's no water that was never cooked. Liquid that were pasteurized ain't bishul acha bishul. The problem is it cooled off. So some say all liquid across the board is charmei bishul that does not get cooked in a kli sheni. Others are machmir and they consider only oil and water to be charmei bishul, but the eitz is kli shlishi is fine. Honey could be added to a kli shlishi l'chol hadeis. Instant soup or instant anything actually, or tea bag that's raw is a form of instant. The fact that you put it into kli sheni or even kli shlishi, it could get cooked. So one should not make instant soup or use a tea bag. Perhaps even in a kli shlishi, as we saw, because that is the gemar bishul of that particular item. Cooked eggs, raw eggs to cooked eggs, or even soft to hard, many are machmir. That's also this extreme form of kalei bishul. As we saw, that a dava gush is something that could cook, so basically one should be careful not to add uncooked spices onto a dava gush. But as we said, if the spices were cooked, l'mashal a salt that you know was cooked, there will be a tzatvi mekel to add it to a dava gush. Okay. Shalom aleichem, Rabbi Yankel. How are you? How's your summer? You back? Till next time.